I'm Matt from Utah Trikes, and today I'm going to show you how to assemble a KMX Cobra kit. In the kit box, you'll find a parts box, seat, boom, front wheel assemblies, rear wheel, and the main frame. In the small parts box, you'll find the tie rod bolts, wrenches, kingpin assembly bolts, chain, rear wheel quick release, rear derailleur hanger, pedals, bolts for the rear disc brake, and the lower seat mounting bolts and seat stay bolts. First step in assembly is going to be installing the left-hand wheel assembly. First, you're going to install the bushings that are in the bag with the M10 bolts for the wheel assemblies. Just install one in the top and one in the bottom. And they do have sort of a loose fit, so you'll need to hold the one in the top, and you can just slip it right over there, right over the head tube assembly, right over the head tube. Next, you're going to take an M10 bolt with a washer installed on it, and just slide that down in. You're just going to repeat the same thing for the right side. Find it easiest to install both left and right side without putting the nut on the bottom, and that way it evens out the weight and you're not finding the trike as you're trying to do everything else. Once you have the bolt inserted through the head tube, go ahead and install the nut and washer on the bottom side. Once you get the threads started, you can then tighten down the bolt with the wrenches provided. Once you've installed the bolts and tightened them down, you can then install the caps. Before you insert the wheel into the dropouts, you'll need to install the rear derailleur hanger. The easiest way to do this is to place it in position and then start all three screws by hand. You're going to need a number 2 Phillips blade screwdriver for this step. Next, we're going to install the rear wheel. First, you're going to have to insert the skewer into the wheel itself. There's 2 small springs. You want to make sure you get one spring on either side of the wheel. The end just comes right off, and it's standard practice to put the lever on the non-drive side or the brake side of the rear wheel. Install the spring like so. Next, we are going to install the rear wheel. Set the wheel on the ground and just lower the dropouts onto the axle of the trike. Slip into position. You can then close the quick release. Once you've installed the wheel assemblies, next you're going to install the right hand side of the track rod or tie rod. First, insert the bolt. Then take the small washer, install that, then the large spacer. You can then slip it through the kingpin assembly. Next, you're going to install the plastic washer, the large metal washer, and then the nut. Just for a different angle, we'll show you the left side as well. So remember, bolt through the tie rod end, thin metal washer, spacer into the kingpin, large plastic washer, large metal washer, and then the nut. Notice the rear brake for this model is actually zip tied to the brake lever on the left wheel here. So we're going to clip that. To begin with, we're just going to take the caliper and run it through the cable guides here. Once you've snugged up the bolts for the caliper, you can then adjust it. There is a web address in the instructions to Bangle's website I'm going to go ahead and show you here as well. First, you're going to loosen the adjustment bolts up on the top of the caliper. Once you've got the caliper bolts up on the top loose, the caliper will be able to slide side to side like this. The best angle to look from when you're adjusting the rear brake caliper is from this angle exactly. And you can see that there's a small gap of light on either side of the brake rotor. This means that the rotor is not contacting the pads and will not make any rubbing sounds or anything like that. Also, you want to make sure that the brake lever does not travel all the way to the grip when you pull the lever. If you need to adjust the inside pad, you can use the 5mm Allen wrench in this position here and rotate it one way or the other to move the pad travel in or out. Because this trike has a rear brake, it's going to have a dual pull lever on the right hand side and a single pull lever on the left side. And this lever's actually got a parking brake on it. Pretty cool. Just operates like that. So that being said, you're going to have a cable crossover from the left caliper to the right hand side of the trike. So we're just going to run that. And that will just follow along the tie rod. And it actually, the kit comes with some zip ties. So at some point we'll clean everything up and zip tie both the left caliper brake cable and the rear caliper brake cable to the tie rod there. Once we get that aligned and everything, the tie rod adjusted, we'll do that. But the cable's going to run over here, and you've got the end here. Make sure everything's seated so you have enough cable to work with. And you're going to need to rotate the adjusters here into a position where they both line up with the slot in the caliper body. And then you just take that end and you get it up into the large hole in the body up top, and then assuming the barrel doesn't rotate on you, you just pull the cable down through the slot, let it seat back up in, and then just kind of rotate things and we'll adjust that brake. Next, you're going to take that rear derailleur we just unclipped, and you're going to clip this cable housing into the frame. Those clips there. You're then going to install the rear derailleur on the hanger here. It's worth noting that this is called a B-screw here, and you want to make sure that that is behind the tab here on the rear derailleur hanger. You see it's kind of notched out there, and so the B-screw is actually going to seat up against that and control the rotation of the derailleur this way, only slightly. So we're going to start this portion with a little preliminary derailleur adjustment here. If you sight from the back of the trike like so, you can see that this upper jockey wheel is what is actually going to guide the chain onto the cassette as it rotates, the wheel forward. So it's going to come off the bottom wheel, roll around that one, roll from there up. So what you want to do for adjustment is you have these two screws here. You've got your high and your low. So the smallest cog on the back is going to be high. The largest cog is going to be low. With the low cog, when the trike is in 8th gear or high gear, you want this cog to actually sit just to the outside of the smallest cog on the cassette. So this is actually sitting just to the inside. So you want to get it to the point where it's opposite of where it's at right now. And so you just small adjustment there. You only ever need to do maybe one full and then incremental adjustments of half to quarter turns at a time. And so once you've got that seating, resting where it's to the outside, you can leave that, and then I usually just push it over. And this one you're going to want the cog to line up directly with the smallest, and so right now it's lining up in between 2nd and 3rd. So we're going to have to go out with that one quite a ways. We're going to go few there, and still not quite there. A few more rotations, and that's closer, still in between second and first. And go a bit more. Alright, that's almost there. Got a half rotation, and another half rotation. Alright, we're there. So next you're going to install the boom. Basically what you have here on this model is a 44, 32, 22 chain rings on the crank. And then you've got the derailleur up top here. So basically, as far as the adjustment on this, the same limit screws as you found on the rear derailleur. This one seems to be an adjustment. You just kind of want the cog to be lined up in the center of the derailleur, and then same thing that way. So that one, we'll probably need to adjust that out, but that can be done when the boom is on the trike and when the chain is run. So this is pretty straightforward. I usually like to set the bottom of the boom into the frame and then just kind of work it kind of corner by corner, and then just slide it in. Every now and again they need a little persuasion, but a good smack on the end of the bottom bracket, you usually get it to slide right in. So if your boom ends up being too long, you need to slide it in farther. And because it's aluminum, you can just use a hacksaw and actually cut the back end of the boom off, and that'll allow you to slide it in farther. And you don't want to slide it in too far, because that can cause a clearance issue with your heels and the cruciform on the pedals, so you want to be aware of that. Make sure you're getting the right size model trike for you. The front derailleur cable is going to be zip tied to the left handlebar, so we're just going to unclip that. What you've got here is the cable housing, and this is actually referred to as a noodle. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take the cable, and there's a slot underneath the boom. You're just going to run the cable up, and that actually travels through the boom along with the noodle, and the noodle will actually seat in the hole in the top of the boom like that. You're going to want to make sure that the cable is seated in the stops and everything properly, and that the derailleur is at first. You can just kind of hold on to it, and if it's pulling tight, you don't want that. You want it as slack as it'll go, and then you will loosen the bolt here and run the cable through that clamp on this side here. Left and right is always referred to as left or right from rider's perspective. So anytime you're riding a trike or a bike, if it's left, it's always going to be the left side if you were on the trike. So if you look, the pedals are actually stamped here, left and right. So that's going to be from rider's perspective. So left side here, and the left is actually left-handed threads as well. So what I usually do is I'll start threading it, and usually I just put the pedals in there and rotate the cranks backwards and hold each spindle of the pedals, and that threads them in. First, for seat installation, set the frame on the trike and then insert the seat stays. And then once you have those in place, you're going to take the M6 bolts, line up the holes, just thread those on in. Next, we're going to install the seat mounting hardware. This is easiest done with the trike upside down. If you look, I've already got one side installed. So you're going to have one threaded plate and one plate with just straight holes through it. So you put each bolt through there, and then the shim. The threaded plate is going to go through the two slots on the bottom of the seat frame, and the shim is going to go between the seat frame and the frame of the trike. And you can just put those over and thread it in. You'll want to set up the boom length before cutting the chain for the trike. Best way to do this, sit on the trike, put your heel on the pedal, and turn the crank to the fully extended position. At this position, your knee should be fully extended, so that when you switch to pedal with the ball of your foot, your knee is bent. For the chain setup, you're going to want to shift the rear derailleur into 8th, and the front derailleur into 3rd. Next, you're going to take one of the larger zip ties provided. You're actually going to rotate the derailleur all the way forward and zip tie it to the frame. We're going to run the chain through the power side chain tube. This is the one that has the idler wheel. Next, we're going to route the chain around the cassette, through the derailleur, and into the return chain tube. So the easiest way to do that is rest the chain on the cassette, roll it down, and then pick it up with your finger underneath and push it around on the upper jockey wheel of the cassette. Notice there's a little piece of metal that's folded in under here. You want to make sure that you get the chain to the inside of that, otherwise the chain's going to rub on it and wear through it. Next, you just go over the top of this jockey wheel and down into the chain tube. For the next step, you're going to want to loop each chain so that they don't slide back into the chain tube. For this step, you are going to need a chain tool. I'm using the Park CT3. Use the power side chain and run it across the top of the largest chain ring. Next, you can take the return chain and run it across the largest chain ring as well. Now keep in mind that we zip tied the derailleur forward so that there's no tension on it. This will make it easy to size. And you're just going to run it as tight as you can and make sure that you are cutting it in a position where you've got two of the same end. So, with it rested across, go a little tighter, and we're going to cut it there. Set the chain into the chain tool and slowly press the link. The chain also comes with a 2-piece reusable master link. The easiest way to connect the master link is to just run the chain through the front derailleur. Clip the master link in to each side. Connect it, and then pull to seat the link. Once you have the chain connected, you can go ahead and clip the zip tie holding the rear derailleur in place. Earlier on in the video, I showed you how to set the high and low limit screws for the rear derailleur. Now I'm going to show you how to do the same for the front. Here's your limit screws. As you can see, the chain is very, very close and even contacting the cage of the derailleur. So what you're going to want to do is use the low limit screw to set the derailleur a little farther away from the chain. This is going to make your derailleur cable a little bit slack, so you can use the barrel adjuster on the shifter to tighten that up. In some cases, you may have to adjust the high limit screw as well. In this case, it seems to be shifting fine. The high limit screw is just here. If it's throwing the chain too far, you're going to want to thread the high limit screw in, or clockwise, and if it's not bumping it up, you're going to want to thread it out, or counterclockwise. For the rear derailleur, you're going to just put it into 8th gear and start clicking through the gears. If you get any hesitations or anything, you'll want to shift it into sort of a central gear and sight from behind and kind of up top, and make sure that the chain is making a straight line off the cassette directly to the upper cog. So as you can see, The derailleur's making some funny noises and doesn't seem to be shifting properly. So we're going to go to the back, sight along the chain, down to the cog, and it looks like it's just a bit loose, so we'll give it a few clicks over and then check the response of the derailleur. Again, it seems to be slightly out of tune. We'll just give it a couple more clicks. Now it seems to be jumping up without hesitation and shifting down without hesitation. For this step, you're going to need a 13mm box end wrench and a tape measure. So you're going to loosen each lock nut on the tie rod ends, and then use a tape measure to measure across. In order to actually change the adjustment, you just rotate the tie rod one way or the other. Basically what you're trying to do here is make it so the measurement front and back is equal. Just make minor adjustments and measure until you have the exact same measurement front and back. And because the KMXs are self-centering, they self-center very firmly, you can do this with the trike just sitting on the ground and you'll get a pretty accurate alignment. Once you have the alignment done, you can go ahead and tighten up the lock nuts on each tie rod end. Now that we've got the alignment done, you can zip tie the cables to the tie rod. I find it a lot easier to do this after the alignment because you don't have to fight the cables and the zip ties to rotate the tie rod. Once everything's completed, you can install the rear fender. With you sitting in the trike, you can then actually move the handlebars to a position that's comfortable for you. Once you have it where you like it, you can then snug up the clamps. For more information on this trike or any other trike, please visit our website at utahtrikes.com.